I feel like for the past 2 years, the conversation has very much been, can Mercedes compete with Red Bull? Can they get back on winning ways? Well, it's no longer that simple. Not only are Red Bull proving time and time again that they are able to put together the best car on the grid, but other teams are proving that they are just as capable, including McLaren. We saw last year that McLaren edged ahead of Mercedes in the challenge against Red Bull as we headed into the second half of the season. But with Mercedes finally ditching their design concept that they've stuck with for the past 2 years, can they actually catch Red Bull, or will they just be playing catch-up for another year? James Allison has made it clear that the design concept of the car is not just side pods, but rather how each part of the car, so the front wing, the rear wing, the side pods, the suspension and floor, all work together in unison. People focused on the zero pods because that's what the most obvious thing was that separated their car from the others on the grid. Despite that, Mercedes did change their side pods with their B-spec version at Monaco, and according to Allison, the W15 will have no aerodynamic design link with the W14. Toto Wolff has also been speaking about the progress of the W15. Speaking to Planet F1 at the Autosport Awards, he said, "I think we were bold and courageous to embark on the road with such a car. That was a different concept that nobody else had before and it didn't work. I think it's as simple as that. It's physics and not mystics. Next year's car is going to be more conventional in what you would expect from a Formula 1 car, but there are a few interesting details that we have not seen on other cars yet." He had previously been speaking to Autosport at the end of last year when he said, "We are changing the concept. We are completely moving away from how we laid out the chassis, the weight distribution, the airflow. I mean, literally there's almost every component that's being changed because only by doing that I think we have a chance." He was keen to stress that they could also get it wrong though. We could get it wrong also. So between not gaining what we expect to catching up and making a big step and competing in the front, everything is possible. Toto has also said that Anthony Davidson, Mercedes simulator driver, spoke highly of the W15 when he's been driving it in the simulator. Toto said he was driving Melbourne in the sim and said the car feels like a car for the first time in 2 years. Obviously, I would love this to correlate to the track, but we've seen in the last 2 years that this was not always the case. Obviously, Toto worried about getting a little bit too ahead of himself there. Speaking of Toto Wolff, he's just signed a new 3-year contract with Mercedes, so he's not going anywhere. The issue is that other teams around them have been on a stable trajectory and a stable concept now for a few years, and they can just iterate on that. Mercedes, on the other hand, are almost starting from scratch with their knowledge on how this version of the car will work. If you believe everything Toto is saying, it means that there are significant changes coming from the car, and there is absolutely no guarantee that they'll get all of it right and achieve a fast and drivable car. One thing that Lewis Hamilton has requested for the last few years now is the cockpit to be moved further backwards. He has said he feels as though he's over the front wheels, and while it might not be a huge amount in the grand scheme of things, the drivers can certainly feel it. While this isn't a confirmed change, now would be the time to do it if it fits in with the car design, as they are building a new chassis. Mercedes also had a disadvantage last year with their B-spec car because they still had the exposed crash structures that were in place to appease the regulations during their zero side pod concept. Despite adding side pods, they couldn't change the chassis mid-season and just had to work around them. Of course, these will be integrated into the 2024 machine. One of the rumoured advantage Red Bull had, though, was the size of its gearbox. Being smaller than the opposition, it opened up more floor space at the back of the car for the floor and diffuser to work together. Mercedes are expected to bring a smaller gearbox for 2024, which in turn will give them more flexibility at the back of the car and allow the bodywork to be more compact. The other side of this coin, though, is that their main competitors, McLaren and Aston Martin, will also benefit from this improvement as customer teams. James Allison has a lot of pressure on his shoulders because his return is seen to some as the heralding of Mercedes back to form, but regardless of his immense talent, it's not quite that simple. Mercedes have a long way to go. Like I mentioned earlier, they are really a year behind teams like McLaren and Red Bull in terms of understanding this concept, and we have to assume Red Bull will also make a leap forward. When asked about their progress, George Russell said, "We've been working towards our new car concept for a number of months. We've cross-checked everything 1,000 times and we're all very confident. There's no doubt Red Bull will start the season on top. It's a long season. It starts earlier than ever and finishes later than ever. Things can change." Now, George may have just been tempering expectations, or he and the team are just being realistic, that Red Bull are likely to still be the fastest team. Could we finally get a 3-way fight or even a 4-way fight with different winners each race like we hoped we were going to get last year? I hope so.